I am Patrick Siebert. This is Just Got Played. Everybody, if you don't know me, we have a show on the YouTubes. I don't know if you guys are a big fan of the YouTubes, but we're on there. We're going to offer a tabletop showcase a little bit later, but right now we're talking about board game design. So if you're in the wrong place, please stay, because there's not a lot of you. I want to go out and ask the crowd questions about what you want to know. I want to know what you want to find out about these guys who are accomplished board game designers. Well, Steve's an accomplished board game designer. The rest of us are just kind of hanging out.
All right, let's limit this criteria here just a little bit.
Fire conflict. All right, so does everyone here have a board game in mind that they're working on, a project or something that they want to do? No one here does. Perfect.
Show of hands of people that are working on a game right now. Really?
I think he was at one of my other panels back, yeah, he was at Holiday Missouri back in December. He was like front row asking questions, taking notes. He goes, what's the bad things that could happen with creating a game? And then,
every single aspect.
and then Matt from
Design to
Design
shooting.
was like, oh no, we gotta be positive. I was like, here's the reality.
Reality's good.
You think your game is great and everyone else thinks it sucks. How do you fix it? So, well,
Let's start with that. Mark, how did you get in, why did you decide to do board game design?
it actually started at, like, where both board games come up is at the wooden portal. You know, sitting at the table, having a game day, and all of a sudden coming up with something. So we were at our game day, and my lovely wife and the co-designer's girlfriend were crossing across the table. And as they're cross-talking across the table, he just blurted out, why are there no games about a death ray? The conversation stopped. He looked down, and he goes, well, now I'm going to do this in the game. And then he started writing things down, and we started going from there. And it's like, and then after game day, I said, I saw you writing something down. What do you have in mind? We stayed up until about 6 o'clock that morning, roughing out the rough rules of Death Ray, and they were rough. And then from there, we did revisions, play testing, got a lot of negative reviews. You know, like, this sucks, change it. And we did. We took a lot of input. We ignored some input. You have to, that's like a delicate balance when you design. What was my stuff is good that this one person thinks is bad and becomes toxic to the other people on the table because one person thinks it's bad. So, and then we made an expansion that was really bad. Right? You love that expansion, don't you?
If you are a human garbage, you'll enjoy it. So, like Cards Against Humanity, if you like that.
So,
Wow, you just called like half America garbage.
I'm fine with that.
Stephen Avery, same
If
question.
you like Cards Against Humanity, I'm sure you're a good person.
Stephen Avery, same question.
It's a target right now. I mean, everybody's playing Cards Against Humanity, and even people who don't play board games are playing Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So, I mean, there's obviously an element that likes that kind of raw. I guess. Okay,
You too can play apples to apples, steal that idea, and add another theme onto it.
All right, haters, that's enough. Steve, why did you decide to get into this horrific line of work?
You know, if there's some experience that you want, but there's nothing out of the market that's providing that, that's what motivates you to. And for me, it was at first I was buying regular games, right? So Adventurers came out, and I was like, oh, I want to make a whole bunch of rooms for Adventurers, and you know this should be bigger and better. And then you start buying other games, so you're like, oh, you know, I'm going to add, you know, this and that to the other game. And then after a while, you're like, you know what? I kind of just want to make my own game. And after a while, it's a slippery slope. You just start doing more and more and more, and pretty soon you're doing it all the time.
It's like an addiction.
I think I'll jump in too. I got into game design basically for a couple reasons. The first one was I always got stuck as the dungeon master or something like that, playing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons back in the day. And so it was basically my job to come up with the module, the adventure, the campaign. So after doing that for 5-10 years with my group, it just became almost second nature. And then I got heavy into Dungeons and Dragons skirmish type games. And for a while, that was great, but it was a collectible element to it. And then for whatever reason, after a few years, they decided to discontinue that product line. And that just infuriated me. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start making my own games. Make them better, take everything that I think should be made or modifications to it and turn it into a game and make it, and then don't destroy it. You know, whether it's a one-off game or whether it continues on, but keep it going.
So, I don't know, about like 12 years ago, I kind of got into, you know, like a lot of people, I was playing Magic and D&D as a little kid, and making my own games, and we were making our own Magic formats, like draft formats and tournaments in our own house. And that was fun and stuff, and you know, I stopped playing games, got more into video games. And then, like this kind of modern board game revolution started with like Ticket to Ride, Settlers of Catan, and Carcassonne. And I was like, I really want to learn more about this, because I really like it. And I want to make my own expansions. I want to, you know, see what we can do. And then we started playing more and more games. Like some of these games are broken. We can do this a little better. But to learn about games and how to make them, you know, I was an English major. I was into journalism, did a lot of theater and stuff like that. So I was like, well, how am I going to learn about an industry? I'm going to study it by being a journalist in this industry. So I got into podcasting, and our podcast kind of blew up. So way before like Dice Tower and stuff like that years ago. And you know, my philosophy was to learn about something by covering it as press would be the best way to meet everyone and find out like all the nitty-gritty details of production and design and manufacturing. And that's exactly what happened. So I picked up so many skills and just like traits of what makes a game good, what makes a game marketable, what makes a game sellable, what will get a game on a shelf in a store, because there's so much space on it in a game store. And if you want your game in a store, it really needs to knock another game off that shelf. So yeah, I've been doing that for so long, you know, and I started working with this other guy who started a fulfillment agency for games, and then we started publishing games, and we put like over 100 games through Kickstarter successfully because of that. You know, all developed in-house through us. So that's how I got kind of my start. I started covering it as a journalist to learn more about it, and then just naturally progressed into more of a designer and developer role from there.
All right, so now you've heard a little bit about them and who they are. Do any of you have any questions about board game design? No one?
You're not raising your hand this time. Last time, you're all like, right here, question. John's got one.
I'm not a plant, I swear. This question is for maybe all the guys who designed. What is the general length of time, and I know that there might not really be one, to design a game? I mean, like designing, like we designed a game, let's say in 6 months, and then we'll sit there and be like, is this long enough? Do we think this is ready?
I think there's two philosophies on that. Like, there are people who put their heart and soul into designing a game for years and years and years, and you can get caught in that cycle, and you will be stuck with that game inside of you, never able to make it perfect. And you know, you don't need it to be perfect. You need it to be done. You know, I have friends who have, you know, they'll design a game in a car ride, and it's done. They design a game, you know, in a car, and then it's done, and then they put it to press, and like, you know, how many people are gonna buy your game? And then they also need to play it, and they also need to play it over and over and over. And then how many people are also amongst that, you know, how many people amongst that are also going to be super analytical and then realize it's also broken, and then they're also going to trash it. Like, it's a very small percentage. Now, if you're like me and you want something to be good and not be held to like such a ridiculous standard where like, oh, I'll just put any trash out there, no one's actually going to take it to the length where it needs to be perfect. You know, I feel like you need to put a good game out. But no, you don't. Realistically, in the market today, there's so many games out there, you're going to get lost in the shuffle anyway. So if you make something super marketable, I mean, if you make something that's fun and playable, I mean, that's all people are looking for. For your money, if it's not like a super expensive product, and we can talk about designing for manufacturing in mind, you know, as far as components and what it costs, you know, you're going to get your money's worth. Like, even if the game is not great, $30 for like having a great time with your friends for a half hour is probably worth it. If 6 people just, you know, divide that money out, like, yeah, that was totally
Or
worth
we're
it.
gonna go a different rate. I think who's looking about it for the actual design and start getting it fun, right?
I didn't hear you, brother, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll talk louder. Yeah. Were you talking about more along the lines of how to get the design moving up and going and like the fun flowing? essentially, or how, or
Just-
average cycles?
Just,
Okay.
you hear these stories about people, I spent, like, on, say, Kickstarter, or you watch an interview on YouTube's, I think he was mentioning it before, something called the YouTube, and, and they say, well, I spent 4 years working on this game.
Right.
And to be honest, I've only spent 6 months on my game. You know, I'm not saying I did, I'm saying I spent 6 months on my game, and I think my game is great, and other people have played it and they like it. Why is that game, why did it take him 4 years and me 6 months?
Because he's probably an idiot. I mean, the point is like, if you think it's done, then it's done. Bring it to playtesting. And if your playtesters say it's garbage and it's not done, well, then it's probably not done. Bring
Yeah.
it
I'm
to
going to jump in here and kind of disagree just a little bit. If it's your first game, a lot of people just have reservations about putting it out there. And I would say, we talk to a lot of independent board game designers or new people coming in with their first game. I would say probably the average is about 3 years. Talking to probably over 100 different guys starting up with their first game. Probably about 3 years. And that's probably from their initial concept, like, hey, I got an idea, whether they're starting with a theme or a mechanic and improving on that first. And they might not, you know, they might put it down for a few weeks or months and then come back to it, but about 3 years is kind of the average that I've heard, you know, personal experience.
May I add to that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, what I was gonna say was, it really depends on how your mentality is. If you decide that, you know what, I think I got a great thing here, let me show it off, and then see what I need to improve on to help build it up. Because one thing that's great about this industry is I brought a game to you at Prototype Con in February, and it was called Tales from the Taverns. Don't know if anybody's heard about it yet, but Avery sat down, looked at it, and goes, all right, you need some work. You need to fix this, 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 and this. And we took most of what he said and put it into the game to retool it, and it made the game play faster, funner, and more fun and everything else. So pretty much when you have a game concept and design, you think you have the rules going down, you need to get other people playing with you to sort of see, what am I missing? What is it? Where can I be adding fun if it's really dry? Or is there maybe another mechanic that goes off? And most of the guys will help out without stealing your stuff.
So I was just gonna say, Jeff is actually telling like it is. You don't have to have a perfect game to put it out. The flip side of that is that you only get one first impression when you start shopping at the publishers. And if you start pushing out garbage in front of them, they're not gonna wanna look at anything else you do, right? So it behooves you to make that very first game as good as it can be. And then there's credence to the point too where it's easy to get lost in the details because you want everything to be in that game. So really what I do is whenever I make a game, I make a little punch list of everything I want in the game, and then I order it from most important to least important. And then you can pretty much guarantee half of that stuff is not going to make it in the game because you can't put everything into the board game and make it, you can't put every ingredient into a cake and have it taste good, right? So it's a little bit less vanilla, it's a little bit more sugar, but you're not going to just dump everything in and expect that it's going to be amazing if you put in every ingredient, right? So anyways, get your initial design done to where it's playable and play it a lot by yourself first and then push it in front of some people, maybe your friends, and then put it in front of some people that are not your friends. And the more not they are your friends, the better, because you want like complete strangers to really assess your game and really get their honest opinions.
Sometimes they're brutal.
Yeah, and that said, you also need to know your audience. If you throw a party game in front of somebody who's a really serious, hardcore gamer, they may not like that. And they may not like it even if it's a good game. They just don't like that type of game, right? So, I mean, get it played a lot, and revise. And that's really one of the hardest parts because it's so time consuming, right? And because one person tells you to turn left, the other person says turn right. So you're like, well, you know, what do I do?
So like that said, I mean, don't always stay on the first game. All right, so first of all, like novelists, right? They might work on their first book for like 10 years. Their next book might only take 1 year. Because once you get that muscle flex and you start working at it, you'll start designing bang, bang, bang. Once you start getting published, you get known, and then you start getting contracts to make games, and you start pumping them out real quick. Like, you know, Eric Lang, like he was kind of an unknown dude, and then he started working for Fantasy Flight, started making a couple games, and now he's making like 20 plus games a year or whatever, you know what I mean, for all these different companies. A bunch of people are like that. But the thing is, like, when you look at him, you know, he had a bunch of ideas. He worked on a few of them. He was like, I don't know what to do with this game, and he shelves it. And you go into his house, you even go into Reiner Knizia's house, like one of the most known designers ever. He has a shelf of games that he's just never done because he looked at it, he came up with some ideas, he wrote the mechanics down, he's like, I don't have the time to test that, or I don't know what to do next. I'm just gonna put it away for now, and I'll come back to it later when someone's interested, or I feel like I have passion for this idea again. So you may want to work on a game for 3 years, or maybe you have a good idea for a game and you want to put it down for now because you got passion for another idea that you can finish faster. And maybe you should do that because it'll get you out there quicker, and honestly, maybe you need money, it'll get you money. So it is a business.
What I would say is going back to sort of like when you're doing design and you start bringing that stuff out in front of people. There was one person at one convention, prototype convention I went to, that there was a mechanic in the game that they just didn't like. Like most people were saying, we don't like this, but they said, I want to keep it. And when you actually have 15, 20 people in the industry, not even this industry, but strong board gamers going up to you and saying, you probably don't want to do that, and moving forward on it, usually you're getting a lot of that sort of feedback. You might want to reconsider doing it, just not be stuck to what your vision is, because sometimes your dream and your vision can grow and expand. So always try to keep with that growth and expansion and try to see where it goes, because you might have your baby, but all of a sudden you morph yourself into another game.
I think what they're trying to say is there's no finite time. You just kind of beat the brakes off of it until you're happy with it or when you can't do it anymore, and then you give it a shot. And again, like they just said, blind test the crap out of it. Blind test, blind test, blind test, blind test. I can't say it 7 more times, Brian.
And in the stages of the beta testing, it kind of goes alpha phase, which is kind of like where it's just yourself and your close friends. And then you go into the beta phase where you're still there in front testing with other people who might not be your friends, but they might be fellow game designers or just regular players. And then you also then move into the blind beta phase, which Patrick just mentioned.
It's crucial.
And that is probably the most important aspect. That's where you have the rules already written out, and you shouldn't actually be in the room. You need to hand it off to somebody else who sits it down in front of the number of players, and that person tells them, this isn't my game, this is a game from somebody else, and I want your honest feedback, and just doesn't teach them how to play the game. Hands them the rules and says, you know, please, like, if you just bought this off the shelf, open it up, read the rules, and see how it plays. And the players know that the game designer's not in the room. They,
You
all
might
they
even
have
be
to
in
go.
the room, but
Well, it's actually
they
better.
quietly stalk by.
Yeah, they don't know you're there.
How terribly is this going?
Yeah, they won't feel obligated to, you know, give you pleasantries. Like, oh yeah, it was great, you know.
And there are a lot of conventions now where that's just a great format now you can go to just to get your games played, get critical feedback from that. That's half the time when I'm going to conventions, that's what I'm doing, is just trying to get games played, just to see different people, what the reactions are, you know, what I've overlooked. So, yeah, you gotta play as often as
There's
possible.
unpubs, like all over the country, there's either small groups of unpubs, or you can go to big ones where you can get play tests. There's Manitopia, New Jersey is my favorite, where you'll have extremely targeted play tests, like handpicked for you, which are run by the people doing the play to win actually in the other room.
There's the Sub Guild that's right nearby, that's over in Orlando. There's also one in Tampa too, right? Okay.
And the big conventions have large playtest halls and even unpubbed, and you know, the double. I mean, the people doing the play to win who run Metatopia do playtest groups there too. So like,
Let's not forget that there is an incredible convention called Prototype Con here in Florida.
Oh, yes.
And it's run by, I can't remember her name, there's a woman, I think her name's Heather Mann or something, but anyway, there's an incredible opportunity for all of you to get your playtesting done at Prototype Con. So don't forget that one. Does anybody else have any other questions? All right, I've got one. And I would like to run through all of you, but that came out weird, but you know what I'm talking about. Steve, we'll start with you. You start with theme, or you start with mechanics?
Oh, I'm totally about the theme. All my games, I'm trying to capture experience, and then the theme should fit the experience. I mean, the mechanics should fit the theme. So then again, everybody's process is different. Some people work from spreadsheets. You know, I start sketching actually. I start drawing stuff before I even make the game. But that's just to keep, like, get the creative process going.
I love your tasteful nude sketches. It's amazing. Brian Fiore, same question.
I'm not going to actually answer that question, just between the two choices that you gave me. I actually like to start from production limitations.
Could someone please shut off his microphone?
One game I'm working on, the guy says to me, we got to do it in 28 cards or less. And I think you might know who he is, Patrick Siebert over there. And I'm like, why is that? He's like, because we can get 2 sheets of cards to the production of the game. So that's the only hard limitation. So sometimes it actually makes it easier. It forces you to be creative and to then come up. Then you still got to go to your mechanics, what will work well, and then the theme and stuff. But knowing what your production limitations are helps further narrow and channel your creativity and focus and how you can analyze and just make something that's going to be totally different. And whether your limitations are going to be components, number of components or quality of components, the size of the box, you want to make sure that if you're starting to design a game, that when shipping comes along, it's going to fit in and ship for the right price, because you'll find out that shipping is the largest cost generally when it comes time to publishing and distribution of the game.
Yeah, don't get me started on that. Actually, I like to go with the theme and the genre of game that we're going into. So, it's a lot of times I find it a lot easier to wrap it around an actual theme, because then you could also stay focused on the actual game. Like with Death Ray, it could be very easy that you could have gone all sorts of different directions with it and just totally lose the theme in there. It's like an afterthought. I've seen too many games like that. So I like to stay focused on the theme and what am I going for in this particular game. Like we had to scale back Tales from the Taverns because we started turning into too much take that style attitude where we're knocking each other down, and we didn't want another one of those right away. We wanted more of a storytelling game. So we had to stick with, there's a storytelling, it's not take that. There's a little bit of component, but I didn't stick with this. You know how many times I walk back from, no, that's gonna screw somebody, we gotta keep it out of the game.
I know that's especially difficult for you.
Yes, it is.
So I think there are kind of 2 schools. I mean, there is design for production in mind like that. That's very important. But for me, there is the Reiner Knizia bottom up, which he creates a spreadsheet, which is a game, and then he'll apply a theme to it. Here's Ingenious, here's whatever. And then there's the Richard Lania school of design, which is, here is my rich flavor, and now I'm going to create a game that thematically integrates that and makes it a really rich experience. I am of the Lania school, so I will write the flavor that I think will go at the front of the rulebook or the back of the box, and I will start writing flavor text for cards that I think will be in the game, and then I'll start designing the game itself, and I'll be like, well, how do these cards integrate with whatever system I'm going to piece together, and then the system kind of naturally comes from that. So, sorry about that.
Can we get back to production for a second? Because I found out a little
No, just kidding.
I found out a little piece of information just recently that was very illuminating to me. Because first you start off with this is what I want to make, but then eventually you get to like I want this made. I want to sell it now. I want it to actually happen, right? So a lot of times you don't think of that stuff until after you've already built the game, right? But if you can start thinking about it on the front end, it might save you a lot of work and revision. And production costs, your total production should not be more than 10% of the actual game retail. So if it's an $80 game, you should have $8 worth of production pieces. So and you can kind of look up that information, like how much a custom dice going to cost, how much is punch board. You can get that information. It's difficult because every printer has a slightly different price, it's by volume and all that kind of stuff, but you can still get kind of roundabout figures. And then on top of that, another 8 to 10% is going to be shipping and commission and all those other costs that roll into the game, art, all that kind of stuff. Well, I guess actually art's part of the production cost. Well, there's you have your 10% that goes towards components, and then you have like almost another 10%, usually 8% that goes towards shipping, right? So and handling and
Well, yeah, but don't limit your designs and your games just based on like if you create a game with a bunch of components, like it might help to pitch to a publisher if you've already thought of those things. But your publisher will look at your components and be like, we could turn those into cards and make it cheaper. And
Yeah, that is the
and when we
publisher's-
do that, we might even be able to add more flavor and make it a better game with different components.
But and that's where I was going with that too.
Yeah.
Is the next consideration is making your game attractive to publishers. If you make such a weird little niche game that it only appeals to a few people, it's going gonna be a lot harder to sell than something that's gonna appeal to a lot of people, right? So, or if it's got really strange components that are, you know, difficult to manufacture.
That's something
really-
that shoots a rubber band or something, right?
Yeah, it's like a game that shoots rubber bands, right? Exactly.
Yeah, shoot someone's eye out.
Actually, I'll interject something else there. Sometimes it's good to do the research on what things cost, so that way you know that you're making the game the right way. You know, that you don't all of a sudden decide to put in 10 playboards that's gonna double the cost of your game and have your project fail on Kickstarter because you just didn't go with the simple paper playmat that most people would just be fine with and enjoy. So, a lot of times it's good to do some research as well to see, well, how much am I gonna need for this? And, because then that's a good way of saying, oh my God, it's gonna cost me $20 for this game. Let me see what I can scale back, and instead of using 20 dice, can I use 5? Instead of 30 beads, can I use a tracker instead? And that also might help people, because how many people here has lost parts in games, and the game's almost worthless now? Or really upset of, that was a collector's edition. So,
Even as an indie designer, you can still request pricing quotes from manufacturers. I mean, they have forms you can just fill out on their website and submit for a quote. You're not going to print with them, but at least you'll know what your game might cost. So when you're talking to a publisher, oh, maybe I should scale that back before I even show it to them because it's going to be ludicrous to even present it to them. I'll look like an idiot if I do that.
ludicrous, go!
The other thing is, when you're starting to pitch to publishers, you want to target publishers that you think might fit your game well. Like, look to see what the rest of their game line is before you bring them. You know, oh, they do all party games, but here's my abstract game. You know, they're not gonna. You're wasting their time and yours. You're not going to get anywhere with that. You want to target people that might be interested in your type of game.
Right, like you're not going to pitch a casino game to Fantasy Flight Games or something. You know what I mean? It's just
You're
they're
not
not
pitch
going to buy
anything to
it.
Fantasy Flight Games. No one pitches anything to Fantasy Flight Games. You have
If
to.
they want you, they come find you.
You're already either in Fantasy Flight Games or you're not pitching something to Fantasy Flight Games.
And just remember too, you could be pitching to a publisher, or you could also choose to self-publish using crowdfunding like Kickstarter and Action stuff as well. And in that case, you know, you need to secure your own artwork and all that kind of stuff. But if you're pitching to publishers, you don't want to shell out a bunch of money for all of your artwork to then show the publisher and that kind of thing.
The other thing too is that this community is great in multiple different ways. Not only do you have a bunch of great people that are always around to have fun with and all that, they're a wealth of information and you don't have to get charged to get the information. They'll give it to you freely and say, hey, I think you should do this, I think you should do that. And whenever somebody's giving you that advice, take it for granted, take it to heart, because if they're telling you something, they don't have to tell you anything. And a lot of times they want everybody to succeed. Not only are we all designers, but we're also gamers too. We love playing board games and we want the industry to be elevated up. There's far too many games out there now that are just so far below what they should be because of, you know, somebody sees great art or a great funny little video and all of a sudden they now made $100,000 on Kickstarter with nothing to it, or $8 million on Kickstarter.
I
With
mean,
just
there's just too many
nothing,
games in
yeah.
general. Like 5 years ago, I could easily list off every game that was coming out this year. And now there's so many games, like I have no idea what
Like
games
200,
are coming out.
200.
There's-
And we will talk more about that during the publishing panel if the rest of you
Yes.
like to go.
Yeah.
Weirdly, though, before we move on, I was going to say, unlike a lot of other industries, the board game industry is not really very competitive as far as like you said, people are willing to share their ideas and their information. They're willing to help someone else that might end up being their competition. So it's still very much a kind of a community feeling.
And this community does seem to self-police quite a bit. If somebody's stealing something from you and running in a game, they sometimes
They'll get blacklisted. Like,
really hard.
Why would you would never want to do that, because what if you end up with a really big publisher, and then one of their other games is by that other designer, and then they want you to co-design a game together, but you hate each other because you had some bad, no, so,
It's a very tight-knit group.
yeah, absolutely.
And don't get discouraged, because a lot of times it's like you get an idea for, I want a zombie game, and then you look out there and there's 10 or 20 other zombie games. No matter what, your game is going to be different because of the mechanics, not only the mechanics that you're going to put in there, even if it's like, a worker placement zombie game, there's probably one that exists out there already.
It does now.
It does now. But just even if you come out with something with the same theme, the same mechanic, you're like quarterbacking it. It's the execution is what's going to make you own it and what's going to make it turn out totally different. If we all said we're going to make a worker placement zombie game, same mechanic, same theme, And that's all we said, is the requirement. So I'll go out there, you're gonna come out with 4 different games in the next 3 years.
Yeah, so that's
6 months.
parallel, since you're bringing up parallel development, that happens so frequently. And right now, because of it, there's a real push to get your game out as quickly as possible because somebody else is working on that very same idea right now. While you're listening to us, wasting your time, they're at home making it, they're gonna run.
They're making your game right now.
Yeah, but
See these incentives up here? We're sucking the ideas right out of your heads.
yeah, but like you said, even if 2 people make the same game or have the same idea, it's not going to turn out to be the same game. That being said, a publisher may shy away if something's too similar on the market.
And a great example of that was Pixel Glory and Boss Monster.
Right.
Pixel Glory was actually made about 3 months before Boss Monster came out, and it was ready. But Frank from Zapty Games decided that he was going to try to pitch it to publishers first, and had a couple failures. And he goes, "Oh well." And as he was about to do it again, he was considering doing it. Next thing you know, Boss Monster comes out and takes it over because there was really no Pixel games at the time. Pixel Core still was a successful game that came out. I mean, he's on his 3rd print run.
It's not 500,000 sold like Boss Monster.
Yeah, but even still, those are also 2 games that, you know, are dramatically different. Sort of like people going with the same thing. Hey, pixel art seems to be going up. Let's make a game on pixel art. 2 different game companies went 2 totally different directions with it. So,
Does anybody have any other questions?
we like questions. There we go.
Yay!
Okay, if you're gonna do your first game design, I would assume you pick the type of game that you enjoy playing best.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But then, is it better to go for, say, a more niche, quirky game where you have to worry, where you expect a smaller market, where you have to worry less about the pricing, or should you go for a more broad game?
If it's gonna be your first game, you're probably not gonna actually get it made, because you're gonna, like I was telling him actually yesterday, you're gonna throw everything in it that you love, and it's just gonna be too much. And you're not gonna wanna take anything out of it, because it's your first game, you love it. So what it's really gonna do is teach you about how to make a game. And you're gonna learn a lot from making that first game. And then your second game is going to be the game that you'll actually have more luck publishing. It's going to be more refined. You flex that muscle, like I was saying before. You start to learn how to be a better designer.
Your game muscle.
Yeah, exactly. You've learned those tricks and skills. You've learned how to prototype better. You know all these things. And
First off, I want to say I love this panel because we have so many different various of like this ideas of what game design is. That you're getting a lot of different great opinions that are. It's like no, it's like yeah, I agree. My mindset would be a little bit different. I don't go looking for the niche. I go looking for what I enjoy to play, because if I enjoy it, not only can I work on it better and keep focused on it, but then after I come out, since I'm also designer/publisher, I can then sell it. So that's one of the things that I do. We'll talk more about on that on the publishing side, on how I choose games, but mostly I'm going to do a game that I'm going to enjoy playing, because I'm going to be playing that game hundreds of thousands of times. Before it's